Thank you everyone for joining this webinar specifically focused around multi-factor authentication. I made this presentation with a hope to bring awareness specifically around the importance of layered security on identity and authentication. So let's get started. So, as an overview, here's an overview of some of the topics that I'm going to be covering. I want to really get into why we're at where we're at with MFA, multi-factor authentication, and how we kind of got here. I want to share and level with you on the present day vulnerabilities and threats that we face in an IT environment. Then I'm going to define MFA for you and let you know how it protects and what's the strategy behind protecting individuals and organizations with it. We're going to do a demonstration of MFA in action, and then we're going to have a Q&A where hopefully we can answer all your burning questions, right? So let's get into it. How did we get to where we're at? Why MFA? The thing is, your identity in an organization is very important and it's very unique to you. You know, different people in organizations have different roles and have access to different things, but nonetheless, you also have the name of your organization attached as your domain, right? And so it's very important that with your identity that there are authentication technologies there to serve to ensure that you are who you claim to be, right? Especially in a digital world where you're logging in from anywhere in the world, there has to be something there that to stake your claim to your identity, right? Passwords being the most common Passwords being the most common means of authentication up until today is what we're all most familiar with. But now passwords, they have several flaws. And because of those flaws are what has led us to a more proliferated use of multi-factor authentication. In case a password does get compromised or stolen, MFA is there to not allow easy access to an account, even with one compromised factor. So I want to get into the landscape of where we're at today with the vulnerabilities and threats, right? Solely relying on just a single factor of authentication, like passwords, leaves organizations vulnerable, right? A single layer of security like a password, it just isn't enough because passwords can be weak or reused. They're easily stolen through phishing attacks, and frequently they're exposed in data breaches. Even data breaches that don't have anything to do with your organization, there are pieces of information out there that are getting breached. Um, in a recent study taken by Verizon in 2024, a data breach investigations report revealed that 61% of all breaches exploited user credentials, and 50% of those breaches were directly caused by stolen credentials. All right, so this is very important. I want to take a quick poll. So it's poll o'clock. With everyone on the call, Brian's going to throw a poll up on the screen. I want to ask you how you feel about this, and we're going to see how you feel, and then we're going to kind of answer this. What do you think is the most common way hackers begin their attacks? All right. So, Brian, I don't know if you could see the poll, but it looks like we have 17% said using weak passwords, 17% said not updating software on a regular basis, 50% being tricked into social engineering attacks. Wow. And 17% downloading infected software. So 50% of us were correct. Social engineering. Social engineering, let's talk about social engineering. What is it? It's the practice of manipulating people through a variety of strategies to accomplish desired actions, right? Social engineers often work to influence their targets to take actions that they might not have otherwise have taken. In that same report, that 2024 data investigation report, they found that 68% of breaches involved a non-malicious human element, like a person just simply falling victim to a social engineering attack. On these next follow-up slides, I'm going to go over some of the most common social engineering attacks that we see out here in the landscape, and also different tactics that they use and things that you can look out for, and the specific impact it has on organizations. So let's talk about social engineering attacks. They range from in-person attacks to phishing emails to something a little bit more technical like brute force. I'm going to go through these in order because what happens is all attacks aren't made equal. They're not all just straightforward, like give me your password at gunpoint. A lot of attacks are meticulous and they're thought out. Some of the attackers have resources where they can spend time gathering information and kind of creating a profile about their target before they actually initiate the attack. And I'm going to kind of walk through this in a way that an attacker might start to begin to gather information on someone before they actually initiate a brute force. First things first, shoulder surfing. Very simple. In-person attacks. It's just looking over your shoulder, peering over into your computer to gather information, right? Watching your keystrokes. And I have to say that I've been to a lot of organizations, I've been in a lot of offices, and if I had to have a public service announcement about this, one thing I need to tell everybody, please stop writing your passwords on sticky notes and leaving them around the office. I've seen this time and time again. It's one of the easiest ways someone can get your credentials just because you wrote them down. That's a lot of reasons why you need to have some sort of physical security on your office, like fob entry or lock doors at specific times. Make sure you know who the cleaning people are. People have their passwords written on sticky notes. I mean, it's so easy for me to take a picture or write that down, and then to for an attacker to begin attack later on. So please, this is one thing you can do immediately. Just stop writing them down on sticky notes. Use a password manager. Another thing that you hear about is credential harvesting, right? So this typically comes from uh, it's often performed via phishing attacks or large system compromises of databases, right? So you're trying to gather any kind of personal information or directly their passwords or usernames. Credential harvesting that you probably have heard of recently, AT&T, I think it was earlier this year, but they disclosed that call and text records of 109 million cell phone customers were unlawfully downloaded. I mean, call and text records, I mean, that's conversations that you're having with people, that's who you're calling, phone numbers. I mean, you name it. There's all types of rich information in there that attackers can then use on a later date. You should probably, at this point in 2024, just assume that either partial or all of your information is already out there and available on the dark web, right? If you don't believe me, another attack that we've seen actually a few years ago, almost 10 years ago, right? 7 years ago, or however the math is, September of 2017, Equifax data breach. Sensitive personal data of 148 million Americans were compromised. It included names, home addresses, phone numbers, dates of birth, social security numbers, everything. So, you know, talk about building a rich profile about somebody. The next thing they want to do when they get your home address, when they get your phone number, when they get your date of birth, they want to use this to craft a really good phishing email, right? Next thing you know, you're getting an email that's targeted to you. It's calling you out by name. It might be telling you happy birthday. It might be telling you, referencing things in your life that are true to get you to act, right? They're also, so this is one of the most common forms that we see on a daily basis. They're also looking for other sensitive information like credit card numbers. They're trying to get you to send gift cards to they might be posing as your CEO and asking you to wire money, whatever it may be, or it's just straight malicious links attached in the phishing email. Um, so a little bit about elicitation, right? These are techniques that kind of it covers a broad range of attacks, right? They are techniques used to gather information without the targets really even realizing that. Oh, sorry, we're just zooming around here. Elicitation are techniques used to gather information without the targets actually realizing that they're even providing it. hey, your CEO's office is upstairs to the right, right? And then knowing that I might be playing false ignorant just to get you to answer, oh no, actually it's downstairs next to the bathroom on the left, right? You might not even be realizing that you're giving up this information, but there are a lot of different techniques that people use to elicit information. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in about 2 slides. So, but after they gain all this information, they start to create this profile, then comes more technical attacks where they can actually say, okay, listen, I'm ready. I'm going to get on an endpoint. I'm going to get on the border of the network, and I'm going to try to do a brute force attack, right? Knowing what I know about the user, whether it's usernames, whether it's potential passwords, they can put machines on that will run through millions of passwords in minutes, all right, until they get to the right one. Right, they're just trying to find a way in, and if they have enough information, a lot of times this works. You might hear of dictionary attacks where they just run through every word of the dictionary, or they could just be running through potential passwords or whatever it may be. That's why a lot of times in strong passwords, we ask that you include special characters, numbers, don't necessarily use common phrases. Your kid's birthday and your kid's first name is just, it's not going to cut it anymore. Right. So if you have a password that's referencing obvious information that I can pull off of Facebook, you might want to think about switching your passwords. So in a minute, I'm going to get back into MFA and why it's important, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the art of manipulation, right? There's a lot of different social engineering tactics that are used in phishing emails and in-person attacks that I want you to be aware of, right? Someone can easily trick somebody into taking action by claiming to be a person of authority. Um, and also I want to say that users aren't the only people that have to worry about this. Us on the help desk supporting you also have to worry about these same tactics because they call in and try to employ some of these same tactics to get us to make action on your accounts. So that's why we have to be super vigilant. We have to ask questions. We have to verify our users to make sure that we're not also being socially engineered as well. So someone can pose as a manager or a government official or some person of authority because they know that that's often a good way to trick someone, right? They can make a sense of scarcity, right? Make something look more desirable because it may be the last one, right? They can use intimidation, right? Relying on scaring or bullying an individual to take action. Consensus, using the fact that people tend to want to do what others are doing just to persuade them to take action. What's an example of that? Oh, I mean, everybody else already clicked on it. Why don't you just go ahead and click on it too? Or, yeah, someone already did this for me last week. I don't understand why you can't just do this for me now. Like, put that in your head. You've probably heard something like this before, but that's consensus, right? They can try to build trust with you, right? They try to build a connection. They try to tell you a story about their family or their dog or how they're homeless, or they try to build that emotional connection with you to get you to take action. And lastly, you might use familiarity. You might use an organization that you already like, and it might try to impersonate that organization or that person, or might try to use something that they found about you on Facebook, that you attended a concert, right? Or that you have a certain car, and they might try to use that familiarity aspect to get you to make a decision, right? So this is all the art of manipulation. What I want to do a little bit of an exercise with you now. And I want to watch a video, and I want to see if you can call out and see how many social engineering tactics that you can kind of point out in this next upcoming video. So let's take a look. You guys recognize this? Ocean's 11?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your time, Mr.
Denham. Billy Tim Denham.
Yes, did him like a gene.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Just like the gene.
Man, you got some lovely hands here. Do you moisturize?
I'm sorry?
I tried all sorts of brand of lotion. I even went fragrance free for a whole year. Now my sister, she uses aloe vera with a little sunscreen in it. Yeah, and ideally speaking, we all should wear gloves going to bed. But I found out that would be a little interference in my social agenda, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Plus, I get a reaction from the camphor. So I really don't get into the traditional remedies, you know.
I see, yeah. Let me tell you something. If you were willing to pay cash,
Yeah.
I might be able to drop that down to, say, 716 each.
No,
Yes, sir.
you do that.
Well, yes, sir.
And that'd be lovely. They told me to come see you.
Oh, did they? Well, I'm sure glad they did.
That's what they told me.
Okay, well, let me go get the paperwork, and I'll be right back. You just wait here at the table, okay?
You do that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right. I hope everybody was able to hear that clearly. Really quickly, I mean, by a raise of hands, can I get somebody to just kind of point out what they seen as a form of social engineering? We'll give you guys a second to interact with that poll. One of my favorite movies, by the way. Rest in peace, Barney Mac. Wow. The overwhelming majority of you seems like we've seen some intimidation. Yep. Seen some urgency. Yep, I definitely seen some urgency in there. Can someone tell me what did you see in the video that made you feel like he was intimidating himself? So yeah, I mean, absolutely. Definitely some intimidation with the hand squeezing. One thing that he tried to do, one person did say trust. Him telling him that story about about laying in bed and using this type of lotion, trying to build that connection. Definitely. Um, good. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So before we get into MFA, I just want to quickly go over some numbers to show you the impact. Like what happens? Like if there's a breach, what's the big deal, right? Well, it's a huge deal. According to Cybersecurity Ventures, the global annual cost of cybercrime is predicted to reach $9.5 trillion in 2024. And if you look even further into that, I believe they said that in 2025 they predicted to go to north of $10 trillion, right? So the cost of cybercrime is going up. So what's the cost on these individual organizations? What does that look like? Recently, you may have heard about CDK, Global Outage. CDK is a software provider. They provide software for about 15,000 car dealerships. You may have heard of all these car dealerships having to switch to pen and paper immediately just to take a sale. They had to end up paying $25 million in ransom to a ransomware group called Black Suit. You know, we already seen the statistics on how most breaches are taking place. 61% are from user credentials, 50% of those are from stolen credentials, and 68% are initiated from an initial social engineering attack. Can you imagine being the person in your organization that was responsible, or is the person that clicked on that phishing email that led to the company having to pay $25 million to get back up and running, right? And $25 million, that's, before I say what I'm saying, let me get to the next one. You may have heard of this one as well. Crown Equipment recently suffered a multi-week disruption in their production because of a cyber attack initiated by an international cybercrime. And they also revealed, this was about, I think it was June 8th of this year, it was attributed to a social engineering attack, right? Multi-week disruption. Some of you on this call may know exactly how much money your organization would lose if it's down for just one day. And you can just start to compile that. And that's why some of these people just end up paying the ransom. It starts to become a cost benefit analysis. And then you start to actually get real about cyber security protocols only after you're actually under fire. So we want to get you aware of this stuff now to take action, because MFA, it usually doesn't cost anything extra, right? You just have to implement it, right? And a lot of these cyber crimes, they're connected. AT&T was earlier this year, then Crown, then CDK. I mean, one cyber crime leads to another, Because if one person gets hacked, what the next thing they start to do is they start to send out phishing emails to all your vendors, to all your business partners. And the hardest thing isn't having to go and pay $25 million to the cyber criminals. The hardest thing to do is try to repair your reputation and get your respect back from your clients, from your vendors, that you can actually protect the information and the data and the business that you guys are having together. So I want you to keep in mind when you think about impact, it has, and what this does and what this could potentially be if these identity accounts aren't being protected. So it's poll o'clock again. I have one more poll for you. I want to ask you, how effective do you believe MFA is in preventing unauthorized access to your organization's system? Like, how effective do you believe MFA actually is in preventing these sort of attacks, especially specifically social engineering attacks? Let's give them 1 minute. All right, so the overwhelming majority, it looks like, has voted extremely effective, and you would be correct. I pulled this stat from Google's security blog, and they actually found that simply adding even just a recovery phone number to your Google account can block up to 100% of automated bots, 99% of bulk phishing attacks, and 66% of targeted attacks. All right. So it's super effective in protecting your accounts. And now I'm going to explain why. So what are we trying to get at? What's the strategy here? MFA protects users and organizations through a strategy called defense in depth. All right. We like to use multiple layers of security between the data and the resources in which it resides on. Okay. Your company resources are the pot of gold, and we want to put as many barriers in front of that without hindering the user, but we want to put as many barriers up as possible. So what you might see is someone wants to log in. First, they walk through that first door and give their password. Then they walk through the second door with their authenticator app or their SMS text or call or email, all forms of multi-factor authentication. And sometimes, and probably in the near future, people are going to start adopting even a third form of authentication, and maybe even a fourth form of authentication, maybe later on down the line. But you could then kind of put in biometrics, Face ID, or fingerprint. So, having these multiple layers of defense, having these multiple layers in between the user and the company resources ensures that even if one of these factors somehow gets compromised, there's still one or even two more doors that the would-be attacker has to walk through to be able to get to where they're trying to go. Okay. So let's define MFA. It could be something that including passwords, pins, uh, or an answer to a security question. It could be something that you have, like your mobile phone that has an authenticator app, a smart card, a USB or Bluetooth token, or something else that's in your possession, right? It could be something that you are. It could be that relies on like a physical characteristic, like your fingerprint, or retina scan, or voice prints, or Face ID. you know you have several different options when it comes to when you actually go to set up your multi-factor authentication. I recommend the authenticator app. It's one of the easiest to set up, and it's pretty straightforward. It gives you a lot of details, and the location from it can add it in the location from whence the session is trying to launch from. It's going to give you a challenge code so you can verify the actual session that you're logging into. It could be as easy as a push notification where you just click on it and it shows up on your phone. But some people I hear along the way, they're always like, well, I don't want to install that on my personal phone. Well, fine. There's some other available methods like SMS text, or you can get a phone call, or you can get an email to a secondary email address. So as a user, you do have a responsibility to your organization, to yourself, to make sure that your account is secure. One, keep your MFA methods secure. Don't share your authentication codes with anyone. Don't share them over unencrypted email. If you get an email from me asking you for your authentication code, it's not me, right? Keep your methods secure. Um, Choose strong passwords. Again, try to steer away from the spring 1 2 3s and your child's first name and their birthday. These are played out, unfortunately. All right. We're in 2024. It's been tried. It's easily guessed. And lastly, do not share your credentials with anyone. Try very hard not to use shared accounts. Um, just don't share your credentials with anyone. You should be the only one logging in with your identity or to whatever digital platform you're trying to log into. Okay. So two of the recommended authenticators that we have are Microsoft Authenticator and Duo Security. They're very, very easy to set up. If you're ever prompted to set up one of these authenticators, it's just as easy as downloading the app to your iOS device or to your Android phone, and scanning the QR code from within the app. And once you do that, you're in. And it's the same process for Duo Authenticator as well. Right. So these are actually the exact prompts that you would see, and it walks you through. And if you ever have any issues setting up your authenticator, just reach out to our help desk and we'll remote in and we'll help you out with that. It's easy. So next, I do want to actually show you just what an authenticator app looks like in action, just so you can be aware of what it looks like. So let's take a look. Here you can see I'm going to try to claim my identity and log into my Microsoft account with my username. I'm going to walk through that first door and enter in my password. From there, it prompts an authenticator and comes straight to my phone. From there, I get a challenge request where I'm going to type in the same code that I see on my computer. And I have actually a third form of authentication, Face ID. So once I clear my Face ID, then I'm actually let into my account. Just as easy as that. Well, that concludes my PowerPoint slide. I want to now open this up for Q&A. So are there any burning questions that you have when it comes to
there? Yes. First one, how can an admin audit who is using and not using 2FA?
So yeah, that's easy. You can easily pull that report from Microsoft 365 or from whatever management console that you're using. Cedric, I know it's Microsoft 365. Yeah, you can easily pull that report from Microsoft 365 Admin Center. I see here. You can also pull that report from PowerShell too as well. If you need us to pull that report, submit a ticket and we can definitely get that for you and let you know who's in and who's not. But that report is definitely easily available. Why would someone use Microsoft 2FA versus Duo or Okta? Well, it's really all depends on your preference. They're all gonna provide sufficient two-factor authentication for you. Now, we specifically moved away from Okta because they had a breach. And if you ask Chris, I'm not going to speak for Chris, but a lot of times when Chris is making the determination if we're gonna use a vendor or not, it all comes down to, it's not necessarily that they have a breach, but it's all about their response to it. Right? How quickly did they respond to the issue? How quickly did they come up with a remediation? And what do they plan to do in the future to stop it from happening? If that response is not sufficient, I wouldn't choose that company, right? And that goes for any vendor that you're choosing for your authentication methods. Now, there are some different features that Okta specifically has that you may want to take advantage of that doesn't have anything to do with Microsoft two-factor authentication, but so you may be already using some features there, and then you're like, oh, you have an authenticator, oh, we'll just keep it all in one house. But you can actually use any one of those as a valid form of authentication. But I specifically know with Okta, they had a breach that actually revealed some accounts specific that were that they had a breach that revealed some information about some of their people that were actually using their platform. So it wasn't good, and we actually moved away from them. But Yeah, it all depends on the vendor and kind of like some of the extra features. But as far as a multi-factor authentication, they're doing the same thing, right? And my cyber insurance carrier requires 2FA token expiration periods. Okay, how can I set these for my tenant? Um, Typically, and wherever is handling the identity, so like for Microsoft, it's Microsoft Entra is the identity source. You would set those in your tenant directly there, right? Um, I hope that answers your questions. We can definitely look into any of those questions further, Cedric, offline. Yeah,
Anybody else have any other questions?
great. No other questions?
Awesome job, Rob. Thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you, everyone, for spending a little bit of your Friday afternoon with us, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.